Welcome to episode 7 of the N64 podcast. In this episode, I'll be going over what I've been playing and doing lately, and then I'll talk about some more Nintendo Power, and finally, I'm going to talk about Chopper Attack. Let's start the show. Welcome back, everyone. This should be a very good episode. Sorry once again about the last one. We ran into not only technical difficulties, but also time difficulties. But I think we did a good enough job covering the game, and that's the important part here. We just didn't get around to all the other stuff I like to do before in the podcast. I also wanted to mention that I did an audio submission for Ferg's Atari 2600 Game by Game podcast. It was for the game Plaque Attack. If you haven't heard of Ferg's podcast, check it out. It's a fun podcast that's informative and a blast to listen to. You can also find him on iTunes, Google Play, and I think Stitcher, so go ahead and check him out. So lately, I've been playing, Chopper Attack, but I'll get into that a little bit. However, I've also been playing Atari 2600 games, mostly due to Ferg's podcast giving me a dose of nostalgia whenever I put it on. The games I've been playing have been Secret Quest and Berserk. Now, Berserk, I'm sure, needs no introduction. It's a game where you spawn in a room where you can't touch the walls, and there's robots, and you have to shoot the robots. And then as you keep going through the levels, it gets harder and harder. The robots move faster, they shoot faster, and then Evil Otto comes out. It's just a really fun game to play. The game Secret Quest is more like a Zelda game. They basically said they wanted their own version of Zelda on the 2600, so Atari hired Nolan Bushnell's company to make it, and they did a really good job. It's an exceptional game. It was the last game to officially come out here in North America, so if you can, give it a try. It's actually a lot of fun, and it plays really good. Now, I also did some Atari joystick repair. I have two of them, and yeah, the rubber boot or skirt had come off of them, just like they always do, so I was playing with one and decided to try the other one, and the down direction didn't work. So I took it apart, and I couldn't see anything at all. And so I fixed the rubber boot on them, and it bothered me that it was still broken. So I took it to work, and I asked a coworker, I said, hey, if I put our multimeter in continuity mode, do you think we can test this? And he said, yeah. So he comes out there, and he helps me, because he's really good at microelectronics. And so we went out there, and underneath the on the board, there's these little dome things, one for each direction and then one for the button. And so we cut out the tape because Atari taped them over. And sure enough, there was a bunch of corrosion underneath the one for the down. So I cleaned it off with some alcohol, and then he said, are you ready to have your mind blown? I said, yeah. Well, he went and he came back with a piece of cardboard. He said, cardboard makes a really great fine sandpaper. So he scrubbed it with that, and it looked a lot better. We did this to another direction as well because it looked a little rough. Continuity mode showed it worked. The end of the controller, we had a lot of trouble figuring them out in there. He did fix one of the connectors on the end of it as well. And so then I got him home, and I put the controller in, and it didn't work. I was kind of like, what? So then I reinserted it, and man, it worked, and it was working better than the one that I consider to be my good one. So I was very pleased about that. And so after that, and after playing all this, and after playing Chopper Attack, I did try out Waylay Country Club, and I'll be getting to that game very soon. So that's what I've been up to. I know, it's a lot of exciting stuff. I also want to talk about the Nintendo Power episode, or the Nintendo Power, but before we do that, I had a Twitter user and fan of the show reach out to me, SDP Crypto. He did this a little bit ago, and I apologize for getting to it so late. He said, I always had a blast with Pilot Wings. It was so relaxing. And about the Mario Party 2 glove, it was a generic black glove, so there was no Nintendo brand or anything special. I imagine very few people even bothered to request one, but it's not rare since it's just a regular black glove. So I say thank you for the info, Crypto. And yes, of course, Pilot Wings is always a relaxing experience. At least it is for me. And I'm sorry for getting back so late, but I'm going to keep mentioning these on the show. I check the social media accounts every day just to make sure. So I do try to keep up with it. And thanks again for that. Now, the Nintendo Power, we were going to get to in the last issue, and I'm glad we didn't because I actually had a chance to find something interesting in here, and I'll get to that. It is June of 2000, volume 133. The game on the cover is Army Men Air Combat, and it shows Sarge hanging from a helicopter, just like he loves to do. And I wanted to talk about the letters to the editors of the magazine in the front of it. There was a couple of interesting ones in here that I wanted to read. The rest of the magazine, there's nothing really that special that pops out. There's like some GoldenEye cheats, so if you're into that. But the one I wanted to know about, well, here was the first one, the Samus Spank. Alex Potts wrote in via the internet. I would have to say Samus is the best Super Smash Bros. Character because she can do the Samus Spank and you can supercharge her gun. They wrote back, we like Samus too, but seriously, the Samus Spank? So that was kind of funny. And then there's a couple other ones in here that I wanted to talk about, because this one, Solar Advisory. I recently read that this year the sun may cause a solar storm that could knock out our electronics for a while. If this is true, will it harm our video games in any way? Please tell us. It could happen at any time. And that was from Robert Guilford via the internet. Nintendo Power said back to him, we haven't heard of that particular phenomenon, but we feel it's safe to say that if you have no power, it may be difficult to plug in the N64, unless, of course, you've rigged it with solar panels that can harness the awesome solar storm. Remember, in a power outage, there's always Game Boy. Well, you didn't answer his question. Is it going to harm the electronics or not? But I'm pretty sure that we survived, as I don't even remember that happening in 2000. And then there was the last one here from Liz Fawn via the internet. She says, I was playing Zelda Ocarina of Time and was talking to adult Malon at Lon Lon Ranch. I looked at her in the first-person view and noticed she was wearing a brooch. It was Bowser. Why would you put Bowser in a Zelda adventure? They wrote back, frankly, we didn't believe you until we headed to Lon Lon Ranch and checked it out for ourselves, and wouldn't you know it, you're right. There are two possibilities, the first of which is that Mr. Miyamoto enjoys shuffling little bits of his creations together, as evidenced by the pictures you can see inside Hyrule Castle from the courtyard, which I think has like Mario and Yoshi in it. I'm not positive. I have seen something on that before. The other possibility is that Bowser has fallen on some hard times since his last defeat, and is trying to make ends meet by selling trinkets in his own image. Even supervillains have to put bread on the table, So, I mean, there's no definite answer, but I think we pretty much know that it's in there because Miyamoto wanted it in there, would be my guess. So, yeah, the reviews of the games in here. One was for, what was it? It was Duck Dodgers. And so that actually got a decent review score here in Nintendo Power. There's nothing really that just stood out in this issue of the magazine. So, it's just another standard issue of the magazine. So I think we're going to go ahead and take a break here. And it's what I'm going to play here is, well, I'll tell you why. I take these breaks for two reasons. My mouth gets very tired of talking, believe it or not. And two, it's a chance for me to play music from the game I'm covering without having to turn it down like I did in the last episode. In this case, I'm going to be playing the music from Chopper Attack Level 2. At least that's how it's worded on YouTube. But in fact, I think it's actually like Level 4. It is in my game anyways, because I went back to level 2 and I'm like, it's not in here. Sure enough, I think they're transposed online. I think they got 2 and 4 mixed up. So I'm going to start at the 45-second mark in the song. I think it's the best song in the game, but we'll talk about that and more after the break here on the N64 podcast. That sounds pretty good to me. Sorry if my audio has changed a little bit during this. I'm trying to figure out the most optimal mic placement. I think I've got it down pat here. I got this thing all padded up, so it's actually going to work pretty good. So, I like that song a lot, and to me, that's the best song in the game. But now let's go ahead and talk about the game. Chopper Attack. Now, that sounds like a generic game name, like it should be on the Atari 2600. In Japan, it's known as Wild Choppers. It's not a simulator game at all. It's not a simulation at all, believe me. It is actually a third-person shooter. As you don't control the height of the chopper, it's done automatically. You just aim and move. I got vibes of like Desert Strike or Jungle Strike while playing this, but it's not as in-depth as that, I would say. This plays more like an arcade game. The game was developed by SETA Corporation and published by Midway. It was released on November 28, 1997 in Japan. June 17th, 1998 in America, and September 1st in 1998 in Europe. The game is only one single player. The game saves directly to the cartridge, so you don't need a save pack, and uses the Rumble Pack if you do desire. SETA Corporation is out of business now, sadly. They have put a lot of games out over the years. Nothing really stands out to me except the horrible Wizard of Oz game from the SNES, which I think the Angry Video Game Nerd talked about. Midway, of course, is Midway, one of the granddaddies of gaming, who sadly is out of business as well as of 2009, the same year SETA Corporation went out. Midway, you will always greatly be remembered, at least to us retro guys. The game is short. I started with a fresh save and got to level 6 out of a total of 7 normal levels. There is one extra level if you beat the last level on Expert, so I almost played through the entire game in one sitting, and that was like 30 to 45 minutes at most. There are 8 playable helicopters/pilots in the game. They are all international, and each one has a different set of skills. They all have normal names like Mike, and well, there's even an Andy. When you complete a mission, your score is added up, and this adds money to your account. You then use that money to buy weapons for the next level. Now, the back of the box here, it says Ace is needed. Join an elite group of international chopper pilots with one objective: hunt down and destroy a renegade terrorist group bent on world domination. And then for the bullet points, it uses little helicopters. First one is engage and destroy the enemy on 8 different intense missions. Blow up strategic enemy radar, shoot ground troops and enemy aircraft as you rescue hostages or escort friendly aircraft from dangerous enemy territory. Cash rewards, giveaway, and an explosive arsenal of ground and air missiles. Transform enemy installations into explosive fireballs with devastating ground and air target lock-on cluster bombs. Fly one of 8 different choppers, each one with different weapons and flying capabilities. Collect power-ups to enhance your chopper's destructive abilities. And then it just has the Midway logo and SETA. The game is rated T for teen for animated violence. And it's got 3 screenshots on the back. The graphics are, they're comparable to maybe like Blast Corps, because that's the kind of overhead view you get while playing the game. So the weapons in the game, you have air-to-air homing missiles. They obviously take out airborne targets. They home in. You have air and ground homing missiles. It goes after both. Then you have ground-to-ground homing. So basically it locks onto a ground target like a tank and shoots at it. Then you have the flares that you can get and distract the enemies shooting missiles at you. You have cluster bombs. It fires and hits in a big cluster. And then there's homing clusters, which locks on, but it's like the previous one. It just costs a lot more. Then you have line rockets. It fires 10 rockets at a time, and that thing is like really good for like strafing on like an area. There's also a secret weapon. It's a homing plasma blaster, or secret weapon. It's a homing plasma blaster called the Alien Disruptor. It fires a green plasma blast with which obviously locks onto alien ships. I'm reading off the guide here. This is only, but you have to beat level 7 on Expert to get that, and it is $10,000 in the game. Now, the item pickups are annoying to me, as you have to blow up buildings, and then they bounce up and down, and you have to hover over them just in the right spot above and wait for it to bounce up. So you're like a sitting duck waiting on this thing coming in. There's a blue box, and that's got money in it. There's a red box, which increases your firepower from your cannon. Yeah, in addition to cluster bombs and missiles, you have an infinite spray machine gun, and you can upgrade it. I got mine up to like 3 upgrades, and you're shooting 3 bullets at once out of it. Then you have a green box, and that gives you fuel. And then you have a white box, which is health. And there's a black box, which just fires at you, so it's like a booby trap. And so, yeah, fuel is the time limit in the game. You'll run out of fuel trying to complete missions. And then, so yeah, that's basically the weapons in the game. It's a very simple game. Now, the emulation of this game, it runs fine on Project Fix 64, no issues. The purchase, let's see, my copy was $2.99 at a local store. eBay goes for $5 to $10. Amazon, I found one for $2.90 plus shipping. I'm having an off night tonight. I'm telling you, I got a headache. I couldn't find anything about the developers other than SETA Corporation and some producers and testers, but nothing about the musical arrangement, which I really wanted to find on. So the game, basically, you're behind your helicopter and you go through these 7 plus 1 bonus mission, and this guy gives you your orders, and they range anywhere from rescuing POWs, which means blowing up the helipad and then waiting on them to circle around, to this plane flies into enemy territory and there's going to be a war starting, and you have to shoot down the enemies, but he never gets out of there. He just circles around the entire time you're in the level. I thought, man, if you're in the wrong area, get out of there. We'll cover you. There's also missions that are just blowing up stuff. There's one where you're in a mine and you got to run through this mine and you're shooting your helicopter and you blow up these rocks, and then there's this giant tank thing with homing missiles. The last level, or level 7, is basically you going at the enemy base, firing everything you've got, and it is ridiculous. I had a saved game that was on this from the previous owner of my cartridge, and they were on that level, and it is insane. I mean, there's enemies that you can't fire on with your homing missiles. Some of them you have to shoot by hand, and there's just so many of them. You can't just sit there and take this much damage, but at the same time, you got to be taking out the base and all the missiles and tanks, and it was a very frustrating time playing that level. So yeah, that's the basic premise of the game. It's not a super long game at all. So here's my final thoughts. It's okay. It's not something I want to play again. The controls are kind of weird because if you're left-handed, or as they say, left control, use the D-pad to turn the helicopter and move forward and back, and use the stick to aim. Or if you want to say right, you use the stick to, move it left and right. Think like Mario, but then you use the C stick to do the other stuff, like to turn it like you would, to aim. So I don't know. It just felt like I was all over the controller because the L button does stuff, the R button does stuff, the C buttons do stuff if you're in the left-hand control mode, which is how I played it because it was more comfortable, even though I'm right-handed. The C buttons will zoom in and out. You just feel like you're constantly all over the controller. It was still an okay game. I mean, I would not have wanted to buy this for $49. I think that's a ripoff because there's so few levels in the game. This is more like another $29 game, kind of like Big Mountain was for me. There's just not much to it, and I don't know what in the world they were thinking. This feels like a bad arcade knockoff. I was going to throw another game into this episode because I felt like this one was too short. But then I was like, I'm going to try to keep it one at a time, except for a few occasions I have coming up, which I'll get into those later. But I don't know. This game for me, if you're a completionist, you're going to have it in your set. But if you're looking for a good game to play, there are a lot of other games with helicopters on the N64 that are worth playing over this game. I'll tell you, it's not that deep. It's not that long, unless you're looking for a cheap thrill. Another thing, the game really lags really bad, and I mean real bad. I was firing those cluster missiles and those other rockets, and it was maybe going 10 to 9 frames a second. I mean, it was flat out unplayable at some points because of it. Another annoying thing is you shoot, you'll be shooting at guys and stuff, and they'll hit you, and your aim just gets knocked way down or way up, and it literally takes it 3 seconds for it to come back up so you can fire, and that whole time you're having to dodge stuff. One of the funniest things is there's these little rocket guys on the ground. One of them grabbed onto the tail end of my helicopter and was hanging on to it, so that was kind of funny, and he's just hanging on ah! He sounded like the guy from Crow Team's, that game where we're in the pyramids. Oh my gosh. BFE is the newest one. I don't know why I can't remember the name of the game right now. I even love those games, but you know what I'm talking about. The guys that have the rocket arms and they come running screaming at you, but they don't have a head. Serious Sam, that's what I'm trying to think of. He sounded like a Serious Sam guy because he was, kind of like that. So it was kind of funny. So yeah, the game's okay. It's nothing special to write home about. So that's about it for this episode. I know it's another kind of short one, but there's just not a lot to this game, and there's no reason rattling on if there's not. The next episode is going to be Road Rash 64, which I promise I will have more to say about on that game. And so, yeah, you can reach our website. It's n64podcast.com, n64podcast.com. You can get us on Facebook. That's facebook.com/n64podcast. If you want to tweet me or the podcast, it's at the N64 podcast. And of course, you can email show@n64podcast. I'm open to any submissions anytime, day or night. Just send whatever, if you want to kind of be a part of the show that way, you can, send an audio clip or, you can write something about it, the upcoming games. The game list, I don't have a published game list yet. I'm not going at these in any particular order, mostly trying to stay away from the mainstream games right now, just because I want to kind of flesh out some of the back catalog of the N64 and games I never played, like, Chopper Attack. You can reach us on Google Play Music and iTunes. If you don't mind, head over there and give us a review if you like the show, but don't do it if you don't. That helps us out tremendously. The YouTube version of the show is youtube.com/AndyVGR, and I also post from time to time my pickups on social media, and I post when the episodes go live as well. My personal Twitter handle is @AndyVGR, so if you want to talk to me about other stuff on there, I post just about anything random on there, gaming related. And I want to thank my wife for giving me the time to put all this together and for encouraging me to pursue this. The show's theme song is Technoax's Edge of Tomorrow. Remember, everybody, be kind and rewind, but last and certainly not least, good gaming, everybody.